All right, everybody. I am super excited. I have the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Fenn with me today. This is a podcast about actionable data. Like, what can I watch this podcast, get off the podcast, get on my keyboard or on my phone and do right now today?
There's enough arrogance that I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to. I would say that the superpower that I have is I just don't give up.
A lot of our limiting beliefs are external. It's pressures from society, it's pressures from mom and dad.
There's unlimited potential. The only limitation in our growth and our success and our ability to live the life that we want, right? Which is really what we're trying to do. The only limit is the limit that we put. If I think of anything I've ever accomplished, it's because I challenged the status quo.
So, what do you need to employ? What leverage do you need to put in? But it all starts with a mindset. All right, everybody. I am super excited. I have the man, the myth, the legend, Tyler Fenn with me today. Tyler Fenn is the vice president of sales of RedX. If you don't know what RedX is, definitely check that out. This is not a solicitation for RedX, though. It's just to dig into the brain of Tyler Fenn. But RedX is a sales engine. It's for prospecting, for expireds, FISBO, circle prospecting, FURBOs, right, for rent by owners. A huge tool. But what's awesome is Tyler runs multiple master classes and he's just got a history. You know, he was in inside sales years ago. He's got the pedigree to really prove exactly what works. And, as most of you know, and Tyler's going to find out right now, this podcast isn't about theory. It's not about, oh, what is the top team doing, and looking at it from that perspective and saying, oh, wow, this team that does, 3,000 sales a year, this is what they're doing. And then, us individual agents or small team leads are like, yeah, well, great. I don't have a $400,000 budget to do that. Or, yeah, they get so much from their sphere and they throw these big parties. We're not there yet, right? So this is a podcast about actionable data. Like, what can I watch this podcast, get off the podcast, get on my keyboard or on my phone and do right now today that's going to result in 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 sales in the next 90 days to 6 months. So that's what we try to really accomplish on here. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining.
I'm so happy to be with you, Alex.
Awesome. Well, so I've gotten to know Tyler a little bit just because I happen to be a client, but then he's a skier. He's into Jeeps. I have a Wrangler. I've done my crawling. My sessions are crawling, and I love skiing. He turned me on to a really cool tool with skiing of Carve, and then I happened to be up in Utah, and he was nice enough to treat me to a day at a smaller resort called Sundance. So gotten to know him on both a professional as well as personal level, and the guy never ceases to impress me. So I'm going to start out with one of my questions here, Tyler, that I always like to ask is, what would you consider your superpower?
Oh man. That's a good question. I think there's enough arrogance that I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to. That is probably what's gotten me to where I am. I'm not incredibly smart. I'm not incredibly talented, but I don't stop, right? And there's nothing in my brain that says, well, you can't do this because of XYZ. I feel like there's always a way, there's always a solution to whatever the problem is that you face or problems that you face. And just because you can't go chat GPT what that solution is, or you can't find it on Google, or you can't find it on YouTube, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So I would say this, that the superpower that I have is I just don't give up. Is I'll work through a problem until the solution's there. And if I happen to come across that same type of scenario in the future, I'm pretty good at recalling what worked and what didn't, and then repeatable action, so that hopefully if I overcome a problem once, I shouldn't have to overcome it again. I should be able to just implement my systems that are in place, and it will overcome the problem for me.
Little rinse and repeat there.
Yeah.
So I love one of the things that you didn't say in what you said, because you basically said, I just there's an arrogance there, but to believe that anything can be done. And it's interesting because what you didn't say there is extinguishing or removing limiting beliefs. And so many people have exactly that, right? Those limiting beliefs. And it's interesting. This is where I nerd out a little bit. Um, because I'm a big believer in kicking self-doubt to the curb. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book around that, and I do some stage speeches, nothing to do with real estate, but really kicking self-doubt to the curb. And what it really comes down to is that a lot of our limiting beliefs are external. It's pressures from society, it's pressures from mom and dad, it's pressures from siblings, it's pressures from friends that maybe got to a certain level of success before we did. And what we do is we often justify it by pointing to that person and picking out something special about that person. So for instance, I have a fairly small team, and there's some people on my team that might point to the other people on the team that are successful and say things like, "Oh, but she's super charismatic, lives in a luxury community. She knows so many people. Oh, this one, she's been in the business for 20 years. He's just great with words and knows how to say anything to anyone." And then by justifying it, by creating those excuses of why those people are good, you don't even have to say, "I suck." You could just, it's automatically kind of downgrading you to that level because you're putting other people on a pedestal. Well, if you put them on a pedestal, you're below, and we naturally tend to do that. So it's really wild from that, from removing that limiting belief by just taking away those externals. And it sounds like that's a lot of what you do or practice.
Yeah, so here's what's interesting is there's this exercise I like to go through, and I think that you've been on calls where where I've done this, where I said, look, I want you to picture the most amount of money that you've ever made in a year, right? Maybe that's $200,000. And I want I and when I'm asking people this, I go, I want you to double it in your head. Whatever the most amount of money is, you don't have to tell me what it is, but double that. That's the bare minimum. That's the benchmark that we should have in our mind in terms of our income and what we want to accomplish. And anytime I do that, people are like, "Yeah, I can do that." Right? I can go from 200 to 400. And then I tell people, I say, "Okay, now add a zero onto the back of that." So now we've gone from 200 to 400, and now we're at 4 million. And that's the part where people are like, "Oh, okay." Right? I could never do that for whatever reason, right? And it's
Mhm.
and some people are like, well, I don't need that much money. And I go, but yeah, but that's not what I'm trying to get you to think. I'm trying to get you to go, there is unlimited potential. There's unlimited potential. The only limitation in our growth and our success and our ability to live the life that we want, right? Which is really what we're trying to do. The only limit is the limit that we put. And and like you said, right? Sometimes it's huge external. I find a lot of it is simply how we were raised, right? Our experience. I mean, maybe you grew up in a really, really poor home, I mean, the idea of lots of money maybe scares you a little bit, or maybe it makes you feel like you're violating the relationship that you have with your parents or whatever it is, right? But we put these barriers on that say we can't go here, um, and and I love to try to challenge that. I try to go, why not? Right? Why can't I do this ski run, or why can't I, whatever it is. So yeah, I think the self-limiting belief that we put on is um it's the hardest thing we ever have to overcome in our own lives. Right? I mean, if you think about anything great that we've ever accomplished, like if I think of anything I've ever accomplished, it's because I challenged the status quo to go, well, you can't do this because of XYZ. And I go, why not?
Yeah, and I'll add something to that is, um, I'd like for the audience here to really think about flipping that whole concept on its ear that I spoke about a minute ago, where, oh, this person has that advantage and this person has that advantage. And don't look at it as a competitive element, right? You only want to be better than you were yesterday. And, what do you call it? The 1%, do that whole compounding thing that I've heard guys like Gary Vaynerchuk and others do. That, put that aside. What I want you to do is when you are looking at those other people, look at it and go, yeah, you know what? They have an advantage, but there's no reason I can't capitalize on that exact advantage or an advantage like that and make them a bar. It's not that you want to beat that person. It's not that you look at, let's say, John Smith and say, I want to beat John Smith. It's not a competitive. You actually want John Smith to continue succeeding at even higher levels because it shows you it could be done. And it brings me to a story that Tyler, I'm sure you know this one, but many people may not. But something called the Bannister Effect, a story of Roger Bannister, right? In 1953, I believe it was. Roger Bannister was the first person to ever run a mile in under 4 minutes. Now, prior to Roger Bannister doing that, there were doctors, scientists, physicists, engineers that literally said the human body was incapable of doing it. They looked at the joints in the ankles, the knees, the hips, and how the body could actually move, and said it cannot be done. And Roger Bannister went and broke the 4 minute mile. And shortly after that, I don't remember the exact number, but it was like 27 people did it in the next 6 months or a year. And since then, thousands of people have done that. Now, I have zero interest in a 4 minute mile. However, if I was an excited runner and I liked speed and endurance and wanted to do that, not just a sprinter, then that would be my bar, right? It would be my bar of that can be done. So when I do look at, in real estate, for instance, at some agents or some teams, and I look at the volume that they're doing, I look at it and say that can be done. Now, you might want to hedge it to some degree. If you see somebody that's doing, say, 100 million and they are the top agent and they happen to be in, you know, I don't know, let's say Lake Tahoe or San Diego, where the price point is double or triple what your price point is. Yeah, hedge with that. But then just instead of going on the dollar volume, go on the unit volume. Hey, somebody's selling 140 homes a year on their own. Okay, it could be done. Now, you might still say, I don't want that. I don't want that amount of time tie down, what have you. I'd be really happy at 50. But if you know somebody's doing 140 and you know 10 people that are doing 130 and 20 people that are doing 120, then it's not that 50 can't be done. It's certainly not that you can't do 50. It's that what you're doing right now is not accomplishing the 50. So, what do you need to employ? What leverage do you need to put in? But it all starts with the mindset.
Yes. So I here and to build on that, here's what I think we do that if we could figure out if we could figure out how to bottle this skill set up and sell it, we'd be partying on the beach in Hawaii real soon, right? But it's the idea that sometimes when we look and we go, oh, there's that person doing 140 million deal or 140 deals on their own, 100 million in sales volume, we go, we like to identify the things that we feel like they have that we need to replicate, and then we don't execute on actually building out the systems or the skills or whatever it is, right? I mean, how often do you talk to somebody, Alex, where they're like, well, I'm in the process of switching brokerages, and because of that they're like, everything has to stop, right? Like I can't do anything because I'm in the process of switching brokerages. And it's like, why does everything else have to stop because there's this one thing? We have to be able to go, okay, here's what I'm going to accomplish, and then here are the things that I need to execute on to get there. If there's somebody doing 140 deals, there's probably skill sets or systems that they have in place, and some of those are easily identifiable. We can go, well, they've got three admins, and those three admins do these three things on behalf. And I could go hire three admins. And then in our head, we go, well, I'd have to do this, and I'd have to do this, and I'd have to do this. And we start making all these reasons why we're like, oh, it's too much work. Right. I mean, I could never do all of that. And I go, why not? Why not? It's just a matter of moving fast, right? There's an influencer that I follow, Cody Sanchez is her name, and she has this reel that has gone viral that I love. She goes, "Look, the reason that my business grows faster than anybody else's is simply because I move faster." She goes, "If I can do in a day what it takes my competitors to do in a week, it doesn't matter if I do it better or not. The fact that I've done it faster is what matters." And I think that we lack the ability to move fast because we feel like we have to have all our ducks in a row before we can take that step. And in reality, If you look at the most successful people in your life, they're probably scrappy and they make decisions and they move fast and they pivot quickly if the decision doesn't go the way they want. So
Well,
if we can identify what a top producer's doing, let's just go get started instead of trying to put all these things in order that we end up never getting to. And then we go, oh, well, it's because I wasn't able to build out, what that top producing agent has. Does that make sense?
yeah, and to just kind of hone in on something to articulate on a really from a pinpoint standpoint, moving fast, yeah, awesome, right? But one of the things that I heard Tyler say there wasn't just moving fast in what you do. It's not like, oh, I get through 100 phone calls when somebody gets through 50, or I'm really quick with, let's just say a household chore. I'm fast at washing the dishes, or I walk at double the speed that other people do. I just kind of hustle. It's not just about doing the task fast, it's the time between learning and decision and putting it into action, right? If you go, and this happens all the time, right? And Tyler, you run masterminds. You've been on stage multiple times at different events where it's somebody else's event, right? It's a coaching event, and you get to speak on stage for 20 or 30 minutes. And you're not just out there, kind of pimping RedX or something. You're giving them something. You're telling them something they do, whatever system they use, go implement this, right? Here's what works. And you're not saying what works in theory. You're saying what works because, well, you have so many people right in your view set that you see that, okay, this isn't working because they're not doing it. This is working and they're doing it. And you give them that, right? And we leave. And look, I am absolutely a product of my society. I do this too. I leave that particular mastermind workshop 3-day event. And I'm like, this is awesome. I got to go do this stuff. And I get back to the office and I look into it and I look up that particular technology, or maybe it's not even technology, maybe it's just a system, and I download the white paper and I'm reading through it. I see all the protocols, and then I'm like, all right, I've got to get this implemented. And I can tell you, I just did one that I will have implemented, and we will run our first one in May. All the marketing is going out, everything else, but it was a system I learned about a year and a half ago, right? So my time between learning about it, putting everything together, making the decision to put everything together, and then taking the action on it was way longer than it should have been. And what that resulted in is probably building up these workshops that I'm going to be doing over time, to where I probably have 30 or 40 people sitting in a room by now. Had I done the first one 18 months ago, right? That
Yeah.
might have had 6 people sitting in the room. And so what does that translate to in sales? Well, these particular workshops typically have somewhere between a 10 and 30% conversion rate. The difference is skill set. How are you converting them? What are you doing? What is your follow-up cadence afterwards? And I'll get better and better at that. So it's not just that I'm growing in the number of attendees. I'm also growing in my reps, my skill set, my how I'm compelling people, how well I'm delivering it. Because the first couple of times I'm trying to really do it from memory and stay on track. After that, it just becomes natural, right? People hate scripts, but we all have scripts, right? Uh, Tyler, ask me how I'm doing.
Hey, how you doing?
Any better would be illegal,
That's
right?
the script.
You've heard me say that before. I say
Yeah.
it pretty much every time. It's that, or if I'm in a rush, I go amazing. But those are my two.
Yeah.
So script, right? The way I put my kids to bed, wake them up in the morning, all those things. We run scripts in our life because it's out of memory. And so anyway, but that time between decision and action, or learning and decision and action, the shorter you do with that, the dramatically more successful you'll be.
Yeah, and I understand wanting to have everything perfect before you get started. I understand the mindset. But if there's so here's this is an interesting concept that I'm thinking about a lot lately. Is there are um there are deadlines to everything that we do, right? But deadline doesn't always mean timing. And so let's say there's a task, right? So Alex, I'm like, look, you need to go do 100 deals. And I could put a timing deadline on that. And I could say, you need to do 100 deals by, 12 months from now. But if I don't give you a deadline to say this is when you have to, you've got to accomplish this, then typically what people do is they default to the quality of their work rather than a timing deadline, right? Meaning, so let me explain this. Let me articulate this a little bit. If I'm a builder, and a client hires me and they go, I want the perfect home. I want perfect craftsmanship, and I want everything to look amazing. Um, and I don't care when it gets finished. Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to work so particularly and meticulously to make sure that the quality of my work is the deadline or the measurement of success, right? Whereas if somebody says, look, I want a home and I want it done in 12 months, well, now there has to be this decision between taking action and the quality of the work. Now, we don't want to put out crappy work. That's not what I'm saying. But the reality is we should be setting deadlines and timelines for tasks that we typically don't. And so if there's so I love this idea of like, look, we learn about something, we become aware, we make a decision to act on it, and then actual execution. If you were to follow that principle very, very thoughtfully, right? I know that that's kind of the decision making process subconsciously, but if you were very thoughtful, ideally what you would do is you would say, I'm going to execute on this by X date. And it doesn't matter if I've got all the ducks in a row or not. It's going to go live, right? This marketing is going to go live on this day at this time. And when that deadline is there to say, look, this is when I'm going to execute, then the quality of the work, we start to prioritize and we go, well, I have to get A, B, and C done, but D, E, and F, those are like nice to haves, but not crucial. And so you start to prioritize the tasks that actually move the needle the most in your business. And so this is this concept that I've been thinking a lot about is if we don't start to prioritize a timeline or a deadline or a go live date or whatever you want to call it, we end up defaulting to the quality of the build, right? And so this is hugely, hugely dangerous because these are the people that are like, well, I'm switching brokerages. I can't do anything else right now. And I'm
Oh,
going,
wow.
why not? Like what goes into switching your brokerage, right? Changing your email signature and going into your state's online portal and making a few changes. That's it. Like it's not a hugely time consuming process. You might have transactions and contracts in place that you got to work out, but for the most part, people go, well, I want everything to be perfect when I move to my new office. And instead of going, well, I've got a go live date of tomorrow, I got to get crap done today. And it helps you prioritize what has to be done now and what can be done later, um, as opposed to going, I've got to have it 100% ready. Like this is a huge mistake that we make in our lives, especially in our businesses. Right? You've heard me say this many times, Alex, where I go, look, if it's on my calendar, it takes place. Right? I live and die by my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't take place. And the reason why this is because I'm human. And if it's not on my calendar, my brain cannot account for. I already said once, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? And so if I don't have systems in place for me to ensure that stuff gets done when it should be, it likely won't because I'm human and I get distracted and I have desires and passions and wants and appetites and needs that sometimes don't fit exactly what the job calls for in that moment. And so I have to be very, very, very intentional about what goes on my calendar, and I've got to do that on a regular basis. Otherwise, my life becomes too chaotic, right? And I think it's the same when we're trying to build. You have to prioritize and put deadlines on things because that's what allows you. It's what forces you to execute.
For sure. So I want to dive into two things that you just said. So one, when you're talking about the deadlines, there's two different types of deadlines, and it's really important to have a distinction. There's deadlines where there are other stakeholders
Mhm.
outside, and you've got somebody to answer to, and then there's deadlines that you put on yourself. And I tend to find, and again, I've done this myself. If I have a deadline with somebody external, it gets done. If I told you that, or if you asked me to do some project with you and I agreed to it, I'm pretty much it's gonna get done. I mean, unless something really, earth moves and, crazy things happen, I've committed and I'm gonna get it done. I know when I used to work out with a workout partner, I didn't skip days. I had to be really, really sick to skip a day. But when it's me, and I'm only letting myself down and nobody knows about it. I haven't made a public declaration, or even if I did, I put it on Facebook and I know that only 2% of my friends see it. It's kind of easy to kind of put that off, right? I've got a big car project going on right now. It's definitely going to go on longer than I originally had anticipated. Um, so there's those two things. So it's a matter of how do we get better with deadlines for ourselves and put something of value on that deadline. And by the way, when I don't hit a deadline, that's a self-imposed deadline. Um, I don't often feel that bad about it. And the reason I don't is because I am a busy person. I don't feel like, oh, I watch too much TV, or I just messed around a little bit too much. I was being silly with things. No, it's because I put it off for other things and I reprioritized it. But if it was that important to set a deadline to begin with, I should go through with it. So, that's one thing, but I really want to hit on the calendar piece. And because this is a great, as I said earlier, an actionable takeaway. And I'll say, and I really want to know exactly how you work your calendar, because I've heard people say that they live and die by their calendar when it comes to what they do and what they get done. Now, interestingly, I didn't. I've done the time blocking thing over the years so many times, and I got very numb to it. What I mean is, it became noise because I had the same thing in the same time slot each day, but things come up in your days. Something came up yesterday where I, found out that I actually had an 11 a.m. webinar to be on today, right? And it was just something, within my brokerage, and I was super excited about being part of this. So I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to do it. Actually, the 11 o'clock was us. It's now. But that just came up, right? And had I had a calendar block, let's say for prospecting to agents to grow my team, well, now that got doubled up, and so I'm going to push that off. And when am I going to do it? And because of that, I missed it enough times that now, even when I didn't have something at that time, it would come up on my phone and I would just swipe it away. And I never went and looked at my calendar. So this is something that my coach basically demanded I do as homework. I said, hey, look, you could teach me a bunch of stuff about how to talk to people, about how to recruit, about marketing systems. I could tell you I know enough about that to get to the next level. I don't know enough about that to get 5 levels above, but I know enough to get to the next level. So you don't need to load in a bunch more stuff. I need help with the execution, which means I need help with the accountability. So what can you do for me there? And he said, okay, this is what you're going to do. This was on a Thursday, mind you. He says, you are going to, at 4:30 today, you're going to stop everything you're doing. You're going to clear out your remaining tasks, meaning any emails, any text messages that are due back, you're going to do those. You should be able to do that in 15 minutes. Then the next 15 minutes, you're going to take what you've normally used as a task list, and I'll flip to a page of like a steno pad, right? I'll write up a list like this one day and I'll just strike lines through it. And he goes, you're going to write it up like that. And then you're going to number them 1 through 4. One is your highest priority, two is your second, third is your third, and fourth, you probably don't need to do. You should be delegating. He said, and then I want you to put them in the open slots of your calendar tomorrow based on their priority. And he said, and if you have a priority one that's going to take 2 hours and you only have a 30-minute between 8:30 and 9, put it in there for the 30 minutes. You know, I love it when you get in flow and everything else, but if it's your top priority, dedicate the half hour to it. If it ends up taking you 2 hours and 12 minutes because you broke up the time, that's fine. So, but I want you to fill your calendar for the next day. And then I want you to be on your calendar the entire day. I want you to stick to it. And then at the end of the day, at 4:30, you're going to do the same repeat thing, but there's one thing you're going to add. You already sent me the screenshot of your calendar the day before. You're going to send me the screenshot of your calendar for the next day. And you're going to give me a recap of the day, what you missed, what you hit, how you did. And I got to tell you, he even said it. We were on a Zoom and he said, I saw your body language and you said, stop treating me like I'm a 5-year-old in your body language. And you had a roll in your eyes like, God, I don't need to do, come on. Right.
Right? I'm a grown man. I don't need to do that.
Absolutely. And so, but I humored him and I did. And he tracked me for 2 weeks and then said, you don't need to send it to me anymore. And I said, okay. And I thought, does that mean that I don't need to do it anymore? And I knew the answer was no, I need to do it. But I was worried, will I do it? And that was about 6 weeks ago. And I've been doing it every day. If you looked at my calendar today, I've got 15-minute increments on things, I've got hour long, and I stick to it probably about 90%. There's a few things like, for instance, I have record YouTube and record, what I call AP agent playbook videos. And sometimes if I've got some fires that came up through the day, I'll defer that. I always get to them, but I might not get to them at the exact time that I block because there is a flexibility in something like that. So I'd love to turn it over to you to say, what is it that you do? But real quick, before I do, I'm literally doing it at 4:30 that day for the immediate next day, not for 2 days later, not for 3 days later. Nothing's on my calendar except for if I've already signed up for, a webinar or a meeting with somebody or I'm going out of town. Those are the only things that are fixed on my calendar. But anything variable, I'm not touching until the day before, and I'm doing it like it's a task list, but in my calendar instead.
Yeah, so I love this idea. So there's a few things at play here, right? I love the accountability. And you're right, accountability, especially as adults, that's hard for us, right? There's a lot of ego involved. Sometimes I think the biggest driver for me is that deep down I'm like, I should be able to just hold myself accountable to this without having to pay someone to do it. But that's really what good coaching is good coaching is holding us accountable. And the way that I look at scheduling out your time, it's the same concept with a great script, right? Like if I understand and I have a great script for a prospecting call, not every call is going to follow that script exactly, right? The purpose of a good script is to get us from point A to point B as often and as efficiently as possible. But that doesn't mean that it's always going to be a straight line from point A to point B. And having a blocked out calendar is the same. It doesn't mean that my whole day is going to be exactly like that. But what it does is it allows me to prioritize and bring back to what's important after maybe I do get distracted. Bring me back to what's important, right? It's the idea that I've got to keep the main thing. And sometimes life gets in the way, whether that's distraction or fires, emergencies, whatever. But what good calendaring and time blocking does is it brings you back into focus once you get pulled off, because we can't prevent that. Like you could get a phone call right now that totally changes the rest of your day, and at the end of the day at 4:30 you're like, oh man, all these things that I needed to get done I didn't get to, and so you're going to reprioritize those for tomorrow. But that's why the time blocking is important, is because we have to have some mechanism that brings us back. And the reality is it's really a skill set. I mean, it doesn't come natural for me. One of the first things that I've trained myself to do in the morning is one of the first things I do on my phone is I go to my calendar. And I'm usually awake anywhere between like 4 and 6 in the morning, depending on the day. And one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the calendar and know and be able to go, okay, here's what I've got going on today. Because what I see on the calendar might change how I dress. It might change my morning routine. I might go, look, I'm going to be helping somebody, move this afternoon. And Therefore, that might mean that my morning workout is different than what it would normally be because I go, I can't do leg day today. I got to lift a piano this afternoon, right? Like it kind of helps me determine a lot of things and how my day's going to go. But it doesn't come naturally, right? And the thing that I think is important for people to remember about time management, time management is really about choice management. And so your coach making you go, okay, this is number one priority, number two, number three, number four is so valuable because we will find ways to fill our time with things that are absolutely meaningless, that don't move the needle in our business or relationships or personal life or whatever it is. We will find things to fill our time to be busy, but that doesn't mean we're productive, right?
Yes.
And so what we have to do is we have to go, and this is why when something comes up on your calendar, right? So something pops up and you're like, okay, I've got this thing on my calendar and now there's this urgent thing that's going to take place at the same time. You always make a decision between the two about which one is the most important. And but we should always gauge most important as what moves the needle the most in the area where this task has to take place, right? I mean, I've got a really good friend who at 12:30 every single day, so right in the middle of when he's got his lunch planned, he has a reminder on his phone that pops up that says, "Tell my wife I love her." And I go, we shouldn't like he shouldn't have to think about that. But having that there is always the constant reminder to go, look, let's keep the main thing the main thing. And maybe he doesn't text her right then or call her right then, but it's always this reminder to be like, I need to remember to let my wife know that I care. And and at first I used to be like, what kind of husband are you that you can't remember that? But now, I mean, my perspective has totally changed. I'm like, what a valuable thing. He doesn't have to think about it. And then there's this reminder, and some people might think that's insensitive or non-caring, but I look at it and I go, look, he cares enough that he put it in his calendar to make sure that even on days when he's so busy with other things, there's still that reminder that goes, tell your wife that you care. And so it's really all about choice management, is what moves the needle the most in the area that task is assigned to, whether that's your personal life or your business or whatever. You go, I've got task A that's on my calendar, task B is now conflicting. Which of the two requires my time? And I mean, this could take us down a whole other rabbit hole, Alex, but this then comes into, how do I automate my systems, right? How do I make sure that the things that are requiring my time are being done efficiently? And
Well,
are there
it's not
ways?
with the I love yous, by the way, because if he actually recorded an evergreen video and had it send out automatically at the same time every day as like a follow-up boss task, then we'd question him as an I. But so don't do that.
It's the same canned response, right? I can just imagine some automated script that's like, "Hi, honey, today is April 15th, 2025. Just wanted to tell you that I love you."
Yeah, right.
Right? So there's a lot of things that you can automate. There's some things you shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
But this comes back to automation and some of the things that take our time. So there's this fantastic book. I know that I've recommended it to you. I've recommended a lot of times, and it's kind of like my favorite book right now. It's called "Buy Back Your Time," and the one of the concepts in here um, is this idea of a buyback rate, meaning if you have a certain earnings per hour, right, which we should all know what that number is, but if I have a certain earnings per hour and I'm spending it on tasks that I could pay somebody 25% of my wage to do, then that's something that I should outsource. Right? If
Absolutely.
I'm making $100 an hour and I can pay somebody $25 an hour to do this task, that's something that I should offload or automate. And which brings us to technology and personnel, right? Which is the two ways that we automate things. So you either do it technologically or digitally, or you hire somebody to take on that task. But it's important that you spend time on the things that mean the most, on the areas of the business and your personal life that require you. Everything else we should try to push off and automate.
Yeah, and I want to add a little clarity around one of the things you said, because I know that I've struggled with this, and I would imagine a lot of the audience can struggle with this too, is where you said, you may be doing something that's not productive. Well, from a definition of productive, maybe you're actually doing something that's productive, but it's not leading to growth, right? So, for instance, if you're not buying back your time, if you're like, right now, yes, my time is worth X, but I can't afford Y right now, even though it's at a portion of, because I could do it at an off time where you know, where it's okay, where my time isn't actually worth that. My working hours maybe are worth 50, 100, 200, $300 an hour, but my off time, well, that's self care time, but I'm not doing anything at 5 in the morning that, to keep me from that. So this is really important. I'm in my office right now. The floors need to be mopped. Right now, I could buy back my time and hire janitorial, and great, let's do that. However, if I decided not to for some reason, then what I should be doing that is, at 5 or 6 a.m. one morning a week where I come in extra early and I do that, or I'm staying later at night to do that, not during my prospecting time, right? Whether you're prospecting for clients, prospecting for agents, but that's where that choice management comes in, is making sure you're working on the things that move the needle. So yeah, mopping the floors and keeping a clean place is productive, but is it productive towards your goals? Is it productive towards your growth? And that's really an important thing. It's funny that you said choice management. I've heard a couple people say that before, and I recorded a video. It's probably on Lab Code Agents from 5 or 6 years ago, that I say time management is a load of BS. And I go into the video saying, you know, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Elon Musk of the world, we all have the exact same 24 hours. We don't have the ability to manage time. The earth spins and manages time. It's day or night based on, other forces external of us. So we cannot manage time. All we can do is manage decisions. So I called it decision management.
Yeah, yeah.
Say, so get time management out of your lexicon, put decision management in, and realize that's what you control. You control your decisions, and you need to decide, am I going to spend time on this or that? And okay, so let's, we're going to wrap up here. I'm going to ask you another question. But before I ask you the final question, you're obviously, the company that you're with, right, that you're vice president of sales for, is all about prospecting, right? That is the crux of the company. And in your history of not only doing that, but in your sales history, everything else you've done, am I wrong to basically cast some shade or judgment, if I could say so, on the fact that prospecting time is the biggest thing that moves the needle, but the biggest avoided decision in not only our industry, but just sales in general?
Yeah. I think you and I have both been to hundreds of real estate conferences, I'm sure, maybe thousands between the two of us, right? And the term lead generation is like, isn't it such like a dirty word, right? People
Yeah.
are like, lead generation, like I have to do that. Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. I wish every real estate agent had a large enough network that they could get into it and get their real estate license and have enough business that just walks in the door that they could provide the life that they want. But that's just not reality, right? And when you look at the sales cycle, especially a repeatable sales cycle with a specific client in real estate, you're months as a sales cycle and sometimes years as a repeatable sales cycle, which means we have to be filling the time with transactions that are going to produce in the next 12 months, right? And so this idea of lead generation or prospecting, or this idea of new business from new contacts, right? That's really what it is. It's new business from new people. It is so easily avoided, and yet it is the thing that moves the needle the most. And here's why: is number one, I believe wholeheartedly in what you put out into the world and into the universe. I think pays off, right? So whether you subscribe to The Secret or frequencies or any of that, or just positive energy or whatever, I believe wholeheartedly that when you go out there and you work hard to produce, I believe that the universe will allow you to produce, period.
Mhm.
Right. And so
Great.
there's this idea that like, look, some days are for harvesting fruit, and some days are for just shaking the apple tree. And there's going to be times where I get on the phone and I prospect, and I might make 1,000 phone calls and not have a great conversation in any of them. But that doesn't mean that I'm not planting seeds. It doesn't mean that I'm not nurturing relationships. It doesn't mean that fruit isn't going to pay off. That effort isn't going to pay off down the road. But the key is really to be consistent with it. And I think that people think that consistency means perfection over a long period of time, but that's not it. Consistency is simply devoting a little bit of energy to something on a regular basis. That could be once a week. That could be, whatever it is, whatever the timing is. Consistency is key. And you mentioned earlier in the call, you said something about like, I come back from these conferences and I'm super excited to get going. Like we all love to be motivated. We love that feeling of like, yes, I can do it, but what that should trigger is systems that allow us to execute again and again and again, because that's the discipline of being consistent is really what we have to master. In fact, if you want to get into some of my core beliefs, I believe that self-control is our reason for existence. I believe that we exist to learn to self-control.
Yeah.
And
So with that, when I go to conferences now, the one big change that I've made from earlier on to now is that I am looking for the one golden ticket idea.
yes,
Because I'm listening to people on stage, and this person is this expert at expireds and FISBOs, and this person's this expert at internet leads, and this person has this social media channel, and this is what they've done to build it up, and they have so many followers. And then everybody gets excited, and they're like, I got to go back and I got to do social media. I saw how they did expires and FISBOs, and I always thought those were awful before, and now, man, he made it look so easy. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do that. And they're like, and then you don't get any of them done, right? Get one, I mean, if you want to grab more than one because you're newer and you don't have a lot of things going on and you've got some time, but then you're also time blocking that, okay? Because
yeah.
you got to do enough of it to get that kind of excellence out of it. Not perfection, but excellence. So as we wrap here, and this might be right along the lines of what we're talking about, I always like to say, what is one thing, one piece of, or one suggestion that you have right now at the end of this podcast that somebody can go and flip this off on their computer and do right this moment that will impact their tomorrow, that will impact their month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now?
So, yeah, there's a lot of things, and I think context matters. But if I had to give a general statement and say, look, people should go do this, I think it's this. I think it's really similar to what your coach had you do, where you are prioritizing, the things in your day. But here's how I would recommend that people go through this exercise slightly differently: is simply write down everything that you did today. Right? Then don't hold back. Be totally honest. Just write down as much that you can remember that you did today, from the moment that you woke up to right now. And that could be everything from your morning routine. Well, I woke up, I used the restroom, I changed, I showered, I worked out, I made a cup of coffee, I meditated, like whatever it is. Just document everything. And when you're done with that, go through and go, I'm going to notate the things that add to my life. Right? Work toward growth, like what you were saying. I'm gonna just highlight the things that add to my life, and then I'm gonna notate and call out the things that take away, whether they take away from my mental energy, or they take away from my productivity, or they take away from my relationships, or whatever it is. And one of the examples that I use a lot is, it's pretty common nowadays for people to pick up the phone, right? I mean, sometimes before they even get out of bed, and they immediately are on social media, and they doom scroll for 45 minutes before they get out of bed. And I go, does that help your life, or does it take away from your life? And it's not for me to judge what somebody puts, right? They might go, yes, I need that, and that's fine. But there's a lot of us that I would argue that that's not beneficial in any way, shape, or form to our mindset, to our productivity. And so simply document and go, what are all the things I'm doing that add to, and what are the things that take away from? And then pick one thing that adds and try to do it a little bit better. and pick one thing that takes away and try to just do it not as often. And I think that some people go, well, that sounds too easy and it's not going to move the needle. But you do that enough times, and pretty soon you see tremendous growth in your life because you go, look, all these things that add to, I simply did it for 5 minutes longer. And all these things that take away, I did it 5 minutes less. And if you do that once a month, now all of a sudden you've got a whole hour of your day at the end of the year that you're doing something more productive, and it's replaced something that was not productive. So I think that simple awareness of just going, look, where do I spend my time and does it help, is a really, really valuable exercise for people to go through.
That's awesome. I love that. Two thoughts came to mind with that. One is um, when people are doing that, myself included, because I need to do it, being brutally honest with yourself. I immediately visualize somebody playing golf and they hit the ball off in the rough and it's super deep rough and they take this wedge to just get it out of the rough to get it on the fairway and they dink the ball an inch forward and they look around. Nobody saw that. Okay. And they
I've
don't score it,
never done that playing golf.
right? And or they dink it twice and then they're like, you know what? And they look around, nobody's looking, and they grab it out and they just place it still in the rough, but at the top of the blades or just barely on the fringe, and so they could hit it away. And they don't take those two extra strokes, right? So when somebody is doing that doom scrolling, if you put down that you're only doing it for 15 minutes and you're really doing it for 25, well, you're cheating yourself. Or if you say that you were doing it for 25, but you said that it was intentional scrolling because you were looking for this thing, but you realize that, yeah, you actually did go on purpose, intentful, but you could have found the thing with the search bar in 30 seconds, read it, reviewed it in 3 minutes, and been done with it. So it would have taken you 4 minutes instead of 25. Again, being really honest with yourself. The second is, I'm going to geek out here for a second. I was on a webinar earlier this week, and it was with an entrepreneurial group, nothing to do with real estate. It was entrepreneurs. It was a worldwide webinar. There was about 60 or 70 of us from all different countries on it. And this gal actually had a spreadsheet exactly like that. And it had from, I think, 5 o'clock in the morning and all the way to like 7 o'clock at night. And, she had in there at like 6:30, she woke up. So she didn't even have anything in the first columns. And she put in everything exactly like you're saying, just in these rows on a spreadsheet. Then what she did was she ingested it to ChatGPT and she wrote a prompt. And she said, I'm an entrepreneur looking to grow my business as fast as possible. Here are my goals for my business growth at the end of 2025. This is what it's going to take to grow my business to this level. Please analyze what I've done for my day and be brutally honest in the accountability for me as to what I've done that has been productive and moves the needle and what hasn't. And it was mind blowing. Like, it's amazing what ChatGPT and some of these other tools can do.
Yeah.
So that's another exercise. Instead of even saying, hey, was it worth it for me to do it? Because again, sometimes we fill our own narrative, right? So even if we are being completely honest, we're filling our own narrative that, maybe it was, hey, it was doom scrolling. I could have done it in 5 minutes, but that other 20 minutes, that got me back relaxed into a good state. So my next half hour was busy. And, so, hey, I know it was doom scrolling and it wasn't for any purpose, but that's where I gained my inner peace, right? Because that's what we tell ourselves. But is it really? And so who's going to be brutally honest with you? And guess what? If you put your actual goals and what you're trying to accomplish in ChatGPT or another tool like that, it will. It's not always right, but
Yeah.
it gets you along those lines. So super cool. We are definitely over on time, but this was awesome. I really appreciate you here, Tyler, and
Happy to be here.
can't wait to. I know we're nearing the end of a ski season, but can't wait till the next ski season, or maybe meeting up with you at Moab or something for some jeeping.
Let's do that.
All
Great to
right.
talk to you, Alex. Happy to be back anytime.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Thanks so much.